Remember, pine woods are just as real as pigsties, and a darn sight pleasanter to be in. This was the advice that her dying mentor gave to the titular heroine of Emily's Quest when discussing how to think about realism in stories. Because even 100 years ago, the battle between dark and gritty and saccharine writing was raging in the literary world. So much of how a story feels is the result of what elements of what is happening the creator chooses to focus on. And while there is a lot of the pine wood in Transformers Energon, there is enough of the pigsty to cause me a problem. Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today we're going to take a fully spoilery look at Transformers Energon Skybound Universe, book number 8. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't dislike this book. This was a good book. I enjoyed it. I still recommend not only this book, but the entire series as well. But if a good, nay a great work has flaws, or even just things that deviate from my personal taste, I am still going to point them out, overanalyze it. And see, that's just the thing. I don't know if this is a flaw in the story, or just a deviation from my personal taste. And I would really appreciate some feedback in the comments. Is this a fault in the storytelling, or just not my cup of brutality? We will be dive bombing right into the spoilers now, so in order to give you a chance to click away, I will tell you to go check out the links below the video to get yourself a copy of Humans Are Weird. I have the data. Short, absurd science fiction stories. What will our little green friends think of us once the glamour of first contact is worn off? Here come the spoilers. You have been warned. Throughout this story, there's been plenty of the virtues that the Transformers franchise is famous for. True, unselfish heroism, compassion, forgiveness, mercy, justice. When Optimus risks it all to save Spike and the other humans in the hospital with the power of the Matrix. When Sparkplug lets his anger go and bonds with the injured Wheeljack. When Spike reached out to comfort Red Bumblebee. Yeah, that was never supposed to be Cliff. Sorry, buddy. All of these are the virtues that have traditionally shown up in Transformers media, often jumping right over the border into the saccharine. I'm looking at you, AEC. Some iterations have gone darker, exploring the black and gray morality of Transformers Animated and Transformers Prime, but even there was a certain amount of, in universe, I think we'll call it dignity in the way the characters acted. There were exceptions. The live action was full of lack of dignity, but overall I think that dignity, grit, and never say die gumption are a huge part of the Transformers mythos. Something of that element is missing from the story. The latest book mostly, but it was there from the beginning. I did a whole video on how Optimus whinging about how it wasn't his fault when he shot Teletran 1 was out of character. This then is where my confusion is. Is this bad writing considering the genre and franchise, or is it just not to my taste? Because lesser issue aside, we have 3 mechs in horrible condition begging for death, 2 stoic warriors begging for mercy as they are humiliated, and this thread of cringing avoidance of responsibility that runs through an otherwise robustly heroic story. It's as if Daniel Johnson has trouble writing chivalry, that contrasting virtue of violent courage and peaceful gentleness. There was, of course, the commander of the aircraft carrier, someone who is introduced to us as a calm, stoic officer who appears to be the last one to evacuate the Decepticon-controlled ship, who, when captured, begs Thundercracker for his life. Then this cringing, pathetic display by a previous stoic character was unpleasant, not something I wanted to see, but it did sort of make sense in context, and we really had no attachment to this random officer. He had only one scene in a previous book to establish his character. The real sting was Thundercracker. In most iterations of Transformers and the prevailing concept of him in the fandom, Thundercracker falls into the noble warrior trope. Yes, he is on the bad guy's side, but he's not a petty backstabbing coward like Starscream. He has a moral code. He is loyal to the order that he serves. He is not unnecessarily cruel. While his kill count is high, they were either valid military targets or unintentional collateral damage. He's not the kind of mech who goes out of his way to squish inoffensive organics. Of course, there are exceptions to this portrayal of him, but here in Skybound, he is clearly the noble warrior, even to the point of not just passively not hunting for humans for sport. He actively helps with the evacuation of the aircraft carrier, and has clear moral qualms when Soundwave takes his shoulder-mounted Gatling gun to the evacuation rafts. This is most definitely fan-favorite noble warrior version of Thundercracker, who cares for his teammates and has room for compassion in his spark. So, he gets attacked, brutalized, and humiliated, of course. We get a close-up of as a giant finger is forced into his mouth as he begs for help, which just makes me ask, why? That scene did not need to go down that way. The main point of the scene was that the giant Decepticon is crazy, and Soundwave is an effective political negotiator. Why was it necessary to humiliate the stoic noble character in the process? This very much harkens back to Optimus's crippling, cringing scene in the first book. Then there's Carly. Obviously, she's a traumatized girl, but that quickly manifests as hate-filled psychotic violence. Again, I'm very much interested in opinions other than mine. I have heard other YouTubers comment about how he appreciates it in movies when characters show real fear of death, the honest human emotions you would get when someone points a gun at you. How showing that fear is more realistic than the calm stoicism that shows up in the traditional Westerns, say. I don't necessarily agree from an aesthetic point. I don't go to media for that kind of realism, and I think that this book even pushes at the edges of the standard amount of cringing fear you'd see in more realistic media. Then there's the actions of the Autobots. First, Optimus shooting Teletran 1, then when discovering how Soundwave got Teletran 1 working again, continuing to use it, and a Skywarp, even as Optimus shows compassion for Skywarp, bringing back the half-dead Skyfire to use his body. For some reason, these creators are choosing to focus on the pigsty element of realism, in a series that is largely Pinewood. But what do you think? Is this thread of brutal humiliation, cringing diversion of responsibility, and begging for the sweet relief of offlining a problem for the story? Or is it just a problem for me? And again, the overall quality of the book still holds up. There are actual surprises and plot twists. I did not expect them to sink that aircraft carrier. That was genuinely surprising. Watching Optimus figure out that Sparkplug being absorbed into the Matrix has other consequences than just traumatizing Spike is interesting. At first I was a bit skeptical that it was taking Optimus so long to figure out that he was reliving Sparkplug's memories. He hasn't by the end of Book 8. But on reflection, it has been shown time and time again that Optimus and the other Cybertronians have very little idea how organic life works. Baby Spike is not obviously a larval form of current Spike, who is showing some respectable character growth in his own right. Red Bumblebee is still something of an issue. As we watch him grieve and try to deal with Carly and her anger and rejection, it becomes more and more clear that this character arc was written for Bumblebee, and Cliffjumper was a very last-minute replacement. Then there's the issue of the art. Can someone tell me if it's getting worse or not? I am bad at visual stuff, but I know that I don't like looking at the jet planes as much as I did in the previous books. And now that there's a different creative team, everything just seems a little sketchier and less refined. However, this series was never famous for crisp, refined lines of its art, and I'm not enough of an artist to judge properly. But what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Why the strain of pigsty realism in this series? Leave a comment below telling me what you think, hit that like and subscribe button, and peace out, my wonderful viewers.
Drake McCarty's leg was shattered, deep in the wilderness. As the flash flood closed over him, something alien pulled him from the waters. A military base that shouldn't exist. An ancient warrior with secrets of his own. Drake returns to his family with a whole leg and the burden of a secret he doesn't understand. In the forest around them, someone is watching, and something followed him home. Flying Sparks. 90,000 words of science fantasy adventure. The first novel in the Dying Embers universe is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and from the author as a signed copy. Get your copy now and step into a world where dragons walk the forest, aliens lurk on the mountain, and things go boomp in the night.
Escape into another world with the writings of author Betty Adams. Two worlds, one of utter absurdity, one of dramatic tension, both alike in aliens absolutely astounded by human behavior. Humans are weird, short, absurd science fiction stories. Flying sparks, dragons, aliens, and things that go boom in the night.
Books available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and at authorBettyAdams.com for a signed copy.